Welcome to the Orthocast. Today, my guest is Nico. You should definitely go follow him on Instagram. He's a great singer.
Let them go and try to change our thoughts. Let them go and take away.
He's Greek. He actually showed me the pinnacle of Greek culture, my big fat Greek wedding. He's going to make a video with his thoughts on the third one in the future. But thank you so much.
Lots of thoughts.
yeah, lots of thoughts on that. But my first question for you is, what was your upbringing like? How was it being raised, Greek Orthodox in America?
It was a beautiful thing. I really have to give credit to my mother, to be honest, because she married my father, who was a Catholic man, and he didn't really give my mom too hard of a time raising my brother and I as Orthodox. And especially for her moving away from her family in California to New Jersey, she was really on her own to do that. So I give her the credit to really push us to go to church on Sunday mornings and this and that. So even though I had the Catholic side of the family that was near me all the time, and I love them dearly, so I hope if they watch this that they know that. But, as I grew up, I started to see certain differences that I couldn't really articulate, but I just felt that there was a coldness whenever I would go to the Catholic Church. I just didn't feel like fully at home with it. And being baptized in Orthodoxy, maybe that was why. But also, too, I just felt a warmth when I would go to church. But really, I would say that I believed growing up. I didn't have like a yearning for God all the time. Especially going through middle school. At that time, I cared much more about trying to appease others, to be cool, this and that, a lot of typical things that happened to middle schoolers at the time. But really, for me, I would say the turning point for my coming into Orthodoxy, really as a cradle / convert, would be this being bullied in 8th grade. That definitely, that type of humbling and suffering. I know obviously I'm totally against bullying and this and that, but for me it was a good wake-up call to be like, okay, why am I doing certain habits? Why was I trying to appease others so much rather than just being truly who I am and who God made me to be? So I think that was a good moment in my life, a good crossroads to be like, okay, do I truly believe? Do I truly want to listen to the words that I hear at church on Sundays? So that really to me was like the turning point. At that point, when I was leaving 8th grade, middle school, going into high school, I definitely cared much more about what the priest was saying at church about the saints. I remember especially about Saint Nectarios and the suffering that he went through, all the persecution with the bishops that my priest would tell us about. And I don't know, that really that helped me so much at that time. So I started to also, this was funny too. I created this Weebly account called Why You Should Believe in God. And I would put the Holy Fire in Jerusalem during Pascha was on there, the miracles of Saint Nectarios, and me trying to be a scholar, at a young age. So I thought that was pretty funny looking back at it. But I would say that definitely was the spark for me, and to really learn about the different types of saints, the monks, the married saints, what it means to be a martyr, this and that. That definitely, I don't know, it was a good moment in that time to really be like, okay, I really want to do this. I really want to live the Orthodox way.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's sometimes why these bad things happen, in the moment. They seem so awful, but it helps in our character development. And you learn to stick up for yourself. You're a very confident person now. You have that connection to Saint Nectarios, and he definitely underwent a lot of suffering and persecution, but he always chose the higher road. So that's so awesome. So from that point on, that was your wake-up call, oh, this is finally clicking, what I'm hearing in church and what I'm experiencing in my life. And from then you've always taken your faith really seriously. Did you ever in college, did you take it really seriously too, or was it from then you on fire?
I mean, glory to God if that fire was potent, but I would say yes, definitely. I went on a trip actually right as I graduated high school, right before going to college. It's called Ionian Village. And that was a huge I would say milestone in my spiritual life. at that point. I really wanted to go on that trip, and I'll give a little background story as well. My father and I made a deal. He was like, "You have to win a cross country race in order for me to pay for you to go to Greece." And I just was like, "Okay, I don't know if there's any way I can win a varsity race at the time." So I go to my coach and I said, "This is the deal my dad made. I really want to go on this trip. I think it'll be really special. Is there any way, what's your advice?" And he told me, "Well, I could put you in a JV race this coming meet coming up." So I just said, "Sure, why not?" So then, anyway, I really believe this wholeheartedly. I had such energy that day that I didn't have in other races. I just felt such a
Wow.
fire. I was like, I need to win, and literally, I was like, "Oh snap, I'm winning!" Like as I'm getting towards the finish line,
Wow.
and it was just like this. Like I definitely felt a warmth from God, being like, "No, this is blessed by me for you to go."
Yeah.
So I remember my dad was so dumbfounded at the end. So he was like, "I have to borrow money from my mother. Got to do it."
That's awesome. S-
So thank God.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with that trip, going there and everything, there were so many beautiful moments. I would say Saint Gerasimo. We got to go to his tomb in Kefalonia. That was mind blowing. Only because when you go down to the cave underneath the church, there's a hole basically that allows you to crawl through in order to get into that hole. But you can only get through if you truly believe in God. If you don't believe in God, people, no matter how thin you are, cannot get through that hole.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I remember I was going through really bad logisme, bad thoughts as before I was going in down the hole, because definitely were, I would say, struggles in my youth where, like, say if there was an atheist around, who tried to challenge me on my faith, I would get scared, and that was my pride within me,
Yeah.
and I definitely would be bothered by people who didn't believe, which is, in hindsight now, it's foolish to think
Mhm.
that way, because we all are human. We all struggle
Mhm.
with our certain things in life, and I don't always know what other people are going through. But anyway, it was as if I was getting all these thoughts saying, "You don't believe, you don't believe." So I'm freaking out, and
Wow.
just like almost like a mini panic attack, if you will.
Yeah.
So one of my friends, who I will name nameless right now, goes to one of the counselors and he says he's freaking out right now. Can you please help him? So the one of the counselors brought her komposkini, or prayer robe, and gave it to me to pray. And she goes, "Just pray the Jesus prayer, pray to Jesus." And it really, really helped me as I was getting down. So I was like, "Lord, I believe, I believe. Just please, show me, you know." And I get through that hole. I remember I just was so relieved and hyperventilated a little bit after, just like breathing heavy as like a sigh of relief. And I was just like, "Wow." Oh, it was like another warm hug from God,
Wow.
you know, just to feel like, wow, he's with me. I know
Wow.
he's with me. So it was such a beautiful moment. And I carry that on with me through college,
Mhm.
knowing that, what, there's going to be a lot of, people who are going to try to pull me away from my faith.
Yeah.
So I have to really hold strong and, just give it to God in every moment. So that's what happened. After that trip, I felt very rejuvenated. I went down to Charlotte, North Carolina for college
Mhm.
to study architecture. That had its ebbs and flows for sure, in terms of issues and in terms of self growth and all that. But I'm very thankful I did it. I helped start the OCF with my friend down there. So that's the Orthodox Christian Fellowship chapter. So just as a way to get other Orthodox people or catechumens, people who are interested in Orthodoxy, to come together for that
Mhm.
down at the campus. So that was good.
So in the American South, there's lots of Protestants. So how was your interactions with Protestants, having your faith tested?
It was interesting, to
Mhm.
say the least. There definitely were challenges from friends from the architecture program, but there are also, just from people down there. There was such an influx of Protestant people just being in the Bible Belt,
Yeah.
and I'd be invited to go to these things like Crew and to go to different concerts, this and that. And I definitely, without having a big Orthodox community to go to, at least with a friends group at the first couple of years of school, I think I just gave my heart to other jurisdictions just because I needed fellowship when it came to just the faith in general.
Mhm.
So I unfortunately did go to a couple of those concerts, but it wasn't much because I felt a little bit of a disturbance, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I felt something wasn't right
Wrong.
with them. It was overly emotional, a lot of hands in the air type deal. a lot of trance feeling kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I would always walk away being like, this isn't the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, I give people those credit who have faith, at
Mhm.
least, and like that's a start to at least have faith. But I knew in my heart it was not the fullness of the truth. So it was always kind of a struggle, and I definitely was upset in the first couple of years, just being like, Lord, why can't I find people like me?
Yeah.
Why can't I find other Orthodox people to be friends with?
Mhm.
But God answered my prayers through a dear friend of mine named Isabella, and she's the one that her and I started the OCF together. So that was a huge blessing, and really by I would say the third year of that program, we really had a huge group. So that was
Wow.
really nice, and I got to really connect with the people at the local church down there. Actually, the two churches. There was Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Cathedral, which is a huge, massive church, 1,000 families. And then you have St. Octavius in Charlotte as well, which is
Oh.
also another church, and also St. Octavius.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So, and then you're studying architecture, and eventually you go to internship with someone building churches, right? Like that's awesome. Yeah. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So Chris Kamages, he owns CJK Design in actually in California, funny enough, and that actually is a big stepping stone before I talk about me moving out here. But in 2015, I was going from sophomore year into junior year, and I had followed his work even in high school. I was so impressed by the church prototypes that he created, and they're all different forms that he followed through old historic,
Wow.
churches that he studied. So you have the cross and square plan, I'm trying to remember the names, the round dome plan,
Hmm.
the circle, the Hagia Sophia. There's so many different types. So, and he would always try to incorporate the climate, the material types that were, uh, fond in a particular area of the country. So if it was California, he probably would use like a stucco or something like that versus back east. So I was very impressed by how he changed the form or kept the form the same, but changed the material to fit in with the surrounding context.
Yeah.
So I was like, I really want to intern with him. So in 2015, by the grace of God, I had the ability to go out to California for 2 months and intern with him in the Bay Area. And I would drive up to Sacramento on the weekends to visit my grandmother, my yaya, and family out here. So that was really nice. But yeah, I just learned so much at that time from him, which
Hmm.
was amazing. And at that time, I really thought I would be a church architect, and maybe that's God's will for me in the future. But it didn't end up being the case, at least for now. But for that time, it was incredible. And I have to say as well, there were a couple different beautiful things that happened that summer that I think that also helped shape my spiritual life. Um, I discovered that there was a saint in San Francisco, Saint John Maximovitch, through friends in a young adult forum that I went to one of the evenings there. And they were like, you have to go see St. John if you're just visiting in town. And I said, who's that? They said, there's a saint in the city. So I was just like, you're kidding me. And a little back context to that, the Airbnb that my father chose for me, which had, he didn't mention at all that I was Orthodox to the homeowner or nothing. My room that I went into literally had this like tapestry looking icon that was hanging on the wall.
Wow.
And true story. And I remember looking at it and it looked Orthodox. It almost looked like there was a bishop on there, but had no name encrypted on the or embroidered in the tapestry.
Yeah.
So I was just like, that's really bizarre. It looks Orthodox. I'm just gonna put my prayers, my icons near it and pray near that area. So that became my prayer corner. Lo and behold, after I went to that young adult forum, I found out that was St. John that was on my
Wow.
wall, which was
That's
just like
crazy. At a random
intense.
Airbnb?
At a random Airbnb in San Rafael. It's San Rafael.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I go to the lady who owns the Airbnb, and I said, "Are you Orthodox, ma'am? Why is that on your wall?" I was just so taken back, and she goes, "No, I'm Protestant, but I decided one day I found a bookstore and I decided to walk in and buy it. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah,
Like that's
that's divine providence. That's really, yeah. Who just has a Saint John
amen.
Maximovitch tapestry? I didn't know they made those, but that's
Yeah,
interesting.
they're beautiful.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I think you brought up a really good point about orthodoxy. You brought it up in the architecture. Traditionally, when Orthodox go and build their churches, they use like all the materials in the local area, and it's really
Hmm.
interesting to see how the traditional Greek churches are built, the traditional Russian churches. but that also is like a bigger theme of orthodoxy, is like you baptize the culture, just like the materials in the area, like you embrace the good of the culture of the local area, while still being fully orthodox. I've heard Jonathan Peugeot talk about that a lot, but
Mm.
that was interesting that you mentioned. But one thing we really share in common is our love of architecture and these beautiful buildings, which America doesn't really build anymore. We just build these lifeless suburbs. I mean, every
Mhm.
city in America pretty much looks the same, unless a city like San Francisco, a city's on the East Coast, Charlotte is beautiful. All these, like, we really need to build like beautiful, walkable cities like Europe.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. That is such a big topic too, and um, just I would say to kind of go back into the story of how I even got to city planning school.
yeah,
Uh, I always drew as a child, which obviously that kind of makes sense going to architecture school. But I would also draw made up cities as well.
wow,
I would look at old, or I would even look at like landscaping outside of a house, and
yeah,
that would be my inspiration to determine the form of the city,
wow,
oddly enough.
that's awesome.
So things like that, I was just all over the map, like with my
Yeah,
imagination. It ran wild. Even songwriting, we'll get to that later.
yeah,
But yeah, I always felt, especially going to Charlotte, North Carolina,
hmm,
where it's a very car-oriented city, except for like a couple of the neighborhoods that are kind of surrounding the uptown or the downtown district. So it was definitely, I had a drive then to be like, I want to help make cities like better for people,
yeah,
like help them become more walkable, help them to have a better, street frontage, like
yeah,
for like say the storefronts of a building, this and that. I really noticed how I felt more comfortable and more safe to want to go into
hmm,
a cool public corridor
yeah,
compared to like something that was just all car dependent, and maybe there's more homeless around that,
yeah,
and all that, or more danger,
hmm,
kind of type of environments. So yeah, I definitely was inspired to like want to like do that as part of a career.
hmm,
So that's what kind of led me to city planning for grad school, which I'd give credit to St. John Maximovitch again for leading me that direction
hmm,
after praying to him about where to go to school. So yeah, I did that for 2 years and then moved to California, and have been doing city planning work out here through a private company. And I help really do mostly like subdivision work, I would say.
yeah,
But it's still cool to kind of help figure out like, okay, based on where the subdivision sits within the area, how will that impact, traffic? How will that impact where
hmm,
parks go, schools go in the future? Will this be a desirable place for people to want to go?
yeah,
And all those things are factors in our cities currently. You
exactly.
know, I go through downtown Sacramento, and midtown Sacramento, which all the haters out there, it's a great city. It's a great city. I think there's so much charm to it. The beautiful oak trees and just all the different types that we have. The beautiful old architecture. There's something that it really speaks a story to the history of the area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever
So.
play Sims City or Sims? Because I always used to love building houses and building cities in those games. Did you ever play those?
You know what? I did a little bit, but not too much because the money
Oh.
factor I didn't really care for so much, which
Yeah.
now it matters. But
Yeah.
as a kid, I was like, nah, I just want to draw it. I don't want to, deal with the finance.
Yeah. I would always like do the cheat code in the game so you have unlimited money so I could just build like my ideal city. But
Right.
yeah. But no, I think that's so important that we change the way that America builds its cities, because we can see the most desirable places are the walkable places, the places where there's lots of beauty and greenery. Like, people don't want to just sit in their car all day. I mean, it just makes people more agitated, more car accidents. Versus, like in Europe, it's much more walkable. You can live without a car, and you're actually more free because you don't. You're like, a car is an expensive asset. You have to get car insurance. It can get broken into. It's just an extra liability. Versus if you can just walk. Well, first of all, you're gonna get lots of exercise. You're gonna
Hmm.
community too, because if you're like walking to work, walking to your local grocery store, all these things, you're gonna
Oh yeah.
interact with more people. Versus, I think the way that America is, I mean, people literally just drive to work and back, and then they're in their own little bubble. They can go without interacting with people, and they go home, they just sit in front of the TV. And I think this contributes a lot to the obesity in America, to a lot to the political polarization. Versus if you just had like interacting with your neighbor by living in a walkable place, That's what we need.
Oh, for sure. And it also goes to the fact too of if you look at urban renewal back in the 1940s,
Yeah.
that really destroyed cities at
Mhm.
that time. And you had all the families that used to live like in the city centers, they kind of dispersed to go to the suburbs, which,
Yeah.
in hindsight, it makes sense because you want, once you have more wealth accumulated over time, you
Yeah.
want a little more land for your family. But this really escalated during, the GI Bill
Mhm.
at the time. It really and then the what's called the mass production of the automobile
Yeah.
as well
Mhm.
also contributed to all those factors. So it really pushed people to go towards the suburbs. But then obviously for minority groups, unfortunately, kind of forced to go into the urban renewal programs where like a lot of their neighborhoods were decimated, like West End in Sacramento is a good example of that, where now the Capitol Mall is. And a lot of those groups either get pushed towards some kind of welfare housing that happened, unfortunately. So there's a lot of those kind of issues that have spurred from that time period.
Yeah.
So I really do think the big overall message would be the great thing would be to have families come back towards cities and city living.
Mhm.
That's kind of hard. That's a easier said than done kind of
Yeah.
situation because right now you have mostly retirees or empty nesters who want to come back to the city, and then you have young professionals before they get married
Yeah.
that live in the city, and then once they get married, then they want to go buy land, which is understandable, out
Yeah.
somewhere in the suburbs. But my critique on all this is that we should also make the suburbs walkable places then too. We
Yes.
shouldn't have these auto dependent suburbs that are, it takes like 10, 15 minutes to get to the downtown.
Yeah.
We should have that, little corridors that are, close by for people. I give Roseville as an example, just because I, frequent there quite often.
Mm.
West Roseville has some stunning, stunning homes that are being built out in that direction. But my big question is, where is the commercial corridor?
Yeah.
Where for people really to walk to and hang out at? A lot of them seem to not really get that message across or get that picture. So that definitely that's the frustration that I have is like, yes, we have to recognize where people live currently based on the situation of America because it's so spread out. But we should also try to figure out where can we put nodes? Where can we put
Yeah.
transit oriented development? What if I want to like, take a train from Roseville, for example, say if I lived up there, but I want to go to downtown, how could I do that in such an easy manner? We don't have
Exactly.
those infrastructure set in place.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those things that I would love to see happen in the future, you
Mhm.
know? But yes, I think we have to first love where we live. I
Yes.
think that's a big problem in America because we're so transient. We're like, oh, I don't like here. I could go somewhere else. Or
Mhm.
my job has moved me here. There's no sense of being rooted somewhere.
Mhm.
And I think that's a big issue compared to Europe, where a
Yeah.
lot of people have multi generational homes. People are born in the same town that they die in.
Yeah.
So it's all that kind of stuff. So I would like to see more of that for America. I think that would be better for us to take care of our own places and actually appreciate where we live.
Yeah, I think it's a good and bad thing about America because we produce so much stuff, but it comes that we just have such short-term thinking because we can always just, you're right, move somewhere else. There's so much land, just build more. But since we've been doing that for like 60, 70 years, like eventually your cities are so sprawled out, like Los Angeles, that there's just so much traffic and it's creating a miserable environment. Luckily, some cities within the Los Angeles County are starting to build more bikeable, walkable,
Mhm.
transit oriented communities. But this requires long-term thinking. It requires
Mhm.
like the government to actually commit to it because you aren't going to see those instant results. Like if you build a more bike lanes and more public transport, people aren't going to instantly use it. First of all, it needs to be safe, and that's a huge problem and a perception problem too. Is American cities are very dangerous. So what I think, got to make cities safe. Got to remove the perception that cities are just skyscrapers, because you can look at Europe and there's lots of medium density housing, and that's what we should have is medium density urban living where people don't need a car. But it is going to require developers to commit. You build the transit first, and then people come and they build the homes, the commercial centers like you're talking about around the transit, and then people will actually adopt the transit. But again, that requires like you're not going to see the results instantly, but if you commit to it, I think you will see people actually love those areas. Like if you look at the most expensive places in America, they're all the walkable places that are beautiful. I mean, there's endless like cookie cutter suburbs, but there's not a lot of cities like San Francisco, like Savannah, Georgia, like I mean, there's all these beautiful cities that have a unique character. Every U.S. city should be like that, I think.
Oh, definitely. But obviously, it always comes down to money and how
Yeah,
things are
yeah,
getting funded, and how that goes through the tax for the taxpayer.
yeah,
There's so much, unfortunately, involved in all that. Where, as a say if I was just a top-down city planner, I wish I could do all those kind of things,
yeah,
right? Say, poof, here it is.
yeah,
It just doesn't work like that, unfortunately. And every city has different circumstances, different politics. Um, there's a lot of issues in cities that, unfortunately, because it has a lot to do with the politics as
yeah,
well. Because a lot of the family-oriented environments are now in the suburbs, that kind of makes sense as to why a lot of the politics that we get in cities is mostly Democrat, I would say. If we had more of a mix, I would be curious to see how that would occur.
yeah,
And cities should have different, different zones, if you will. Like have the downtown corridor be like, say, for the high-end condos or the townhomes or
hmm,
the apartments for rent. And then, the further you go away, then you could have like your land.
yeah,
It's really, at the end of the day, what I care about the most is to, no matter what type of environment you're in, like have a node to go to. Have some kind of environment that's like, okay, this is my place to like hang out. I think that is so important, and that should be considered much more moving forward in city planning, especially as we get these larger metropolitan areas. And there's a lot of fragmentation in terms of like, okay, I live over here, but I have to drive really far to get somewhere I want to be.
yeah.
So yeah, so bringing the cool stuff to you, if you
Exactly.
will.
I mean, ideally, everything is in your local town, like your local grocery store, gym, church. I mean, this is how all the traditional villages in Europe are. And
Mhm.
like, if everything is there, then you have everything important that you need, and you don't have to like drive like 40 minutes to do the same things. I mean, that's not more free when you have to spend money and time driving 40 minutes to Costco and you load up all these groceries versus if you just had a local grocery store, you could go there, every other day and pick up a little bit groceries, gain a relationship with the person who owns it. Like, and also
Mhm.
more these like Main Street models can be more financially viable because when they build these like huge buildings and they have these huge parking lots, all of the tax revenue is dependent on that one building versus if you have like a main street with multiple businesses, then it's like it makes the ecosystem more healthy because if one of the businesses fails, well, you have all the rest in that commercial real estate area. Because the problem is we just like build, like we build these huge malls, and then the malls stop becoming popular, and then there's just these huge dead zones, just a huge.
Mhm.
They take so much tax revenue away, and it creates more crime when you have these just huge buildings doing nothing. So, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Mm.
Absolutely. There was so much that, at the time, I think because of the way, the car has shaped our developments, that I think that they thought that was the best model, essentially.
Mm.
So that's why it was kind of a cookie cutter solution
Yeah.
to all these different regions throughout the country. But yeah, so we'll see how it shapes forward. There's a lot of movement towards creating actual neighborhoods out of old malls. It's mall. They want to create that into a new downtown area. So that's in the works in their specific plan. So yeah, there's definitely possibilities. It's cool that people are thinking in an innovative way for city planning
Yeah.
to try to get things going. But I will say this, especially with the Orthodox mindset as well.
Yeah.
There's definitely certain things coming forward that we have to be careful of for sure.
Yeah.
Like smart cities is kind of a sketchy topic in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't care for the idea of surveillance in that sense, and
Yeah.
also like the data collected of like a sensor, which I never thought about this until recently. But like, obviously, if a light turns on a light post to conserve energy, right, until someone comes near it, I didn't realize that that data could be recorded in order to like, basically figure out how much people go back and forth from a light,
Yeah.
right? So obviously, that's a very simple example, but if they use that on a bigger scale, like, what could that mean? Is
Yeah.
that a sense of control? Is it
Mhm.
not? Maybe I'm a little more pessimistic than others in that regard, but we should be cautious as well in our fallen world
Yeah.
with these type of technologies. Because yes, I do believe it's good to have walkable cities in the sense of like what we were talking about before, which was community.
Yes.
To really like know people that you're going to rather than going to a big box or a corporate brand. But for these ideas like 15-minute cities, like these are things maybe to look into that are like maybe a little suspicious.
Yeah.
So
I think it really matters the context that it's coming from because yeah, a lot of
yeah,
people like on the right, they talk about these things, how it's going to be used, by the World Economic Forum. It's going to be used for authoritarian control. But I don't think there's an inherent problem with cities, and we all need to flee uh,
for sure.
to rural areas. Like we can stay in cities and fight
Hmm.
and make sure that they don't do that because we have rights as Americans. We can make sure that they don't do that. Lots of governments, local governments, are sticking up against this. That we need to like protect privacy. So I don't think the answer is to run. I think
No,
yeah, but I think we should be cautious. You're totally right about because the World Economic Forum, they do talk about the 15-minute cities, which again it's the context that we're coming from, and I think this is one of the issues that the American right and conservatives don't get right. But that the left, because it's mainly like leftists and socialists who talk about like city planning and walkable cities, but really it's a traditional position. It's
for
like
sure.
it's a really radical position to have these car-centric cities where everyone's spread out. Like the traditional way is people live in their local village, and that's why Europe,
Hmm.
like Europe is that way because Europe was built a long time ago, and so it's really the traditional position to have walkable cities, and it can seem
Absolutely.
yeah, and it can seem overwhelming to like try and change America overnight. Like America, you're not going to change America overnight. I mean, America right now, the situation we're in, Marxists took over, and it took like 60, 70 years. But again, all that can be undone because America is kind of like a aircraft carrier. Like you move it and it moves very slowly, but if you give it enough time, it will move in that direction. But if we can move it a different way, then we can have good effects. But it's just going to take time. And the same goes with city planning. Is that if the new developments now we're building, more walkable things, then eventually in 60, 70 years, then everywhere will be like that. Or maybe we won't see it in a lifetime, but at least we can send a certain trend. So hopefully our kids and grandkids can experience that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I love that you said that or you honed that really in about that is the traditional approach.
Yes, exactly.
It is obviously like you said, it definitely like the liberal mentality has been, oh, city planning for better walkable cities, but really it's like that is a good thing.
Yeah,
It
it is.
it's a good thing to go walk around, do the medieval thing, if you will, like
Yeah.
walk to church, walk to work, walk to
Yeah.
the park for pleasure, wherever you need to go,
Hmm.
or wherever you should go.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's probably what will make cities safer too. Is
Exactly.
definitely like eyes on the street,
Yeah.
which is we use that in architecture terms, but it could also be used for people as well. The more people you have congregating around a certain environment, the safer it feels because you have more people to be witnesses to something,
Yeah.
you know, and that's from a crime perspective.
Hmm.
But it's also just good to have people be in the public realm
Yeah.
of the street.
Hmm.
The I really do believe the first floor of a building is so crucial
Hmm.
to just the environment that it surrounds.
Yeah.
The more type of buildings that are have a nice aesthetic to them, they're inviting on the inside.
Hmm.
They don't have a cold exterior, like less windows or no windows,
Yeah.
things like that. If you have more open windows and like even patio space and awning, this
Hmm.
and that, those things are inviting and attractive.
Yeah, and they're multi-use. I think multi-use
Yeah,
buildings are so important. Like you can
big
have
time.
like a store, a cafe, and then you can have some people living above. Like I think that's
Yeah.
really good. We need more multi-family, multi-use housing instead of only building single family housing and then building a bunch of commercial real estate. But
Totally.
yeah,
Absolutely. And I think, and the other thing too, just to hone it in,
yeah,
is rentership and ownership. We
yeah,
should encourage more ownership in the city, And obviously that's easier said than done because it's so expensive with the real estate market,
Yeah.
but because those are very attractive places to go to. But to have those kind of incentives to get more families to live there, I really do think that will help with the school districts, this and that. But obviously, these are huge issues that I, don't have the time to really speak more to, or to have the knowledge fully to talk about. But uh, I really do think the more families we can encourage to come back, the better it will be all
Yes.
around. So.
Yeah. And I think the problem is that the houses we build now, we just build the most luxury houses and we build so much extra square footage that people don't even need. Like if you look at the houses they built in the 1950s, 1940s, 1930s, they were way
Humble.
small, smaller in square footage. And because of that, it's going to be more affordable. And that's what we need. We don't most people don't need like a 3,000 square foot house. They just need like
Mhm.
a two bedroom, one bath, and again, if they have all this green space around them, they are not constrained. That's what a lot of people's perceptions of cities is that, oh, it's a concrete jungle. It's like New York. But it's like, no, not every city needs to be like that. There's cities like Amsterdam where you're surrounded by greenery and water. So
Mhm.
I think if we do it correctly, you reduce the size, you increase home ownership. We can it can make housing more affordable. It can make people happier. And yeah, ownership is so important because I think people take care of the building more. It creates a sense of community. When you're not just a renter, you actually own the place, and you have like an
Mhm.
incentive to make it look nice, and that increases the property value, and it's overall just better for society. And I think there's lots of different ways to do this. Like people get caught up in like capitalism versus socialism these ways, but I think there's multiple different ways to succeed. The main thing is that you want people to actually care about their properties. There's countries like Singapore that have like public ownership of housing to make sure that everyone like owns their house, because I think everyone should be able to like own their house and have like a piece of America and like be like a citizen. I think that's the culture
Mhm.
we need to promote. But I think we could endlessly talk about this. But
Oh, for sure.
the next question I want to talk about was your music. Have you always been into music and singing? And you have an Instagram where you do that. So yeah, tell us a little about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as part of the creative mind, I think that I was telling you about before, I also or still love music, obviously. It's a very big part of my life. I love songwriting. I think it's very therapeutic. And I've been doing it since I would say elementary school, for sure. At least, obviously, they were like silly songs that I would write back there, lyrical poetry. But I would say, really, when in ninth grade, that's when I really started to try to have more like solid lyrics, like really wholesome meanings, try to like have kind of an Orthodox influence on those songs. So finally, I got one song released last year, and it's taken me forever to get even that one done, but I'm glad it's out there. It's called Found in the Desert, under my name, Nico Wilk. The song was actually inspired by COVID, the experience that we went through at the time. And the idea of going into the desert, meaning going away from all the distractions, all the noise that we've been
Yeah,
experiencing through the news, the media, the phones, all the anxiety and just the craziness that
yeah,
we dealt with at that time. So, and also too, Lent was going on at the time that I was writing it.
yeah.
And I think it was around the time of Saint Mary of Egypt
Oh
Sunday.
yeah, that's
And
perfect. Yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah.
So
And
she
the
was,
and the and the
she,
the desert fathers, like the desert has been a place where people go. But yeah.
Absolutely. So
Hmm.
then I really give her a lot of credit. It's too is for inspiration.
Yeah.
She, her story being
Yeah.
that she was a prostitute
Hmm.
and she wasn't allowed to go into the church of the Theotokos, and that really caused such a remorse in her, like
Yeah.
such a holy guilt, if you will.
Hmm.
And that's when she was like, I really need to change my life.
Yeah.
So the fact that she went to the desert to repent and to get away from the distractions of lust
Hmm.
out there, I thought that was so inspiring for this song. So, because all of us have our own struggles, all of our own passions. So to have that hesychia, as we say in Greek, or that silence, or yeah, I guess prayer or silence, um, especially at those kind of moments where society is going AWOL, I think that's really great
Hmm.
to do that. So that's what Found in the Desert was all about. and also the meaning of we should never fear if the worldly authorities were to tell us that, that God isn't with us. God is with us always,
Yes.
and He's allowing us to go through certain situations. So I think that is what the song is trying to convey.
Yeah, that's awesome. I will have the link below. I think this is a great place to end it. That's a great story. Maybe we can do a part 2 in the future. There's lots more things I
Sure.
want to talk about, but thank you so much for joining us. It was great talking to you.
Thank you all very much, and thank you, Kyle.
Yep.
Talk to you soon.
God bless.